Since the Emancipation Proclamation Act, Black Americans entered the Reconstruction era and have made tremendous advancements in improving their station in life. For a lot of newly freed Black Americans, this period was the beginning foundation for physical, mental, and spiritual healing. Our ancestors' tenacious spirit, their will to succeed, build and uplift their burgeoning communities is highly respected with a badge of honor. They have acquired major prestigious social status in just a short period of time. The impressive evolution from chattel slavery in just a few decades to becoming professionals like educators, lawyers, politicians, successful entrepreneurs owning their own businesses, as well as many properties, was nothing short of astounding. As a result, it afforded them enormous wealth and affluency. Today, we will cover the second installment of the history of Black American wealth. It is imperative to begin this video with the story of the Underground Railroad, which was a game changer from an economic perspective. This system provided Black Americans freedom that paved the way for future opportunities and prosperity. It is important to note that the Underground Railroad was not actually a physical railroad, but a metaphorical name used to help enslaved people escape to northern states. This was done by providing a network of escape routes, like safe houses to rest, and safe code words to identify their contacts. The system was established by the enslaved people seeking freedom for themselves, their families, and the abolitionists who risked their lives aiding them to freedom. History's most iconic figure, of course, is Harriet Tubman, a determined and brave woman who herself successfully escaped chattel slavery by way of the Underground Railroad. Harriet was known to have divine premonitions, visions, and was one day given the instructions to follow the North Star to freedom. As a result, she not only managed to escape the horrors of the plantation life, but she also returned to assist her family and others to freedom. Following the North Star led enslaved people into northern states of America. In fact, some white politicians from the North were at odds with the Southern plantation system. So, the northern white elites yesterday were what we called today progressives, in which some were abolitionists, meaning they did not support the system of slavery. However, the northern white elites who still upheld the cruel system believed it was more humane if the enslaved person worked in a skill-set environment than in the fields. Let's continue. During the Civil War period, newly freed people took advantage of various opportunities in the northern states. They had received higher levels of education, learned additional career skills, as well as earned enough money to buy property and land. Most importantly, they became advocates by joining the abolitionist movement to help end the system of slavery throughout the country. A prominent free Black woman named Anna Evans Murray was born in 1857 in Oberlin, Ohio. Anna came from a lineage of freedmen, meaning an enslaved person given their manumission papers, otherwise freedom papers. Anna was a college-educated woman, became a dedicated teacher who successfully lobbied U.S. Congress for free kindergarten education for marginalized children in Washington, D.C. public schools system. In 1879, she married Daniel Alexander Payne Murray, an educated free black man from Baltimore, Maryland. Anna's husband, Daniel, was a polished, well-spoken man who diligently worked as a professional librarian in Washington, D.C.'s Library of Congress. In essence, this was an esteemed career to possess. Eventually, Daniel's salary increased from $500 annually to $1,000. That would be today $31,000 annually, which gave him the opportunity to save money for future lucrative investments. Fortunately, the couple later bought multiple properties, thus creating a very comfortable, stable, wealthy life for themselves and future children. Notably, the family became social activist leaders for colored people's rights. During the Industrial Era, also known as the Gilded Age, the Murrays were not the only black family who did very well for themselves. So, before I continue, I think it's important to note the Murrays and their associates were the precursor to social activism for black Americans. After the federal government betrayal allowing white mobs to continue to harm the freedmen, causing the end of the Reconstruction era. Moving on. The couple's social circle were a who's who in the black community of successful, well-off business associates, educators, activists, and friends. The Murrays' list of associations landed frequent news articles in the famous Washington, D.C. newspaper, The Evening Star, like Francis and Archibald Grimke, prominent brothers who were intellectuals and community leaders, Mary Church Terrell, and community activist for racial equality, and the daughter of the first Southern black men millionaire, Booker T. Washington, educator and author, W.E.B. Du Bois, sociologist, author, Frederick Douglass, abolitionist, statesman, and writer. In addition, they were early black inventors as well as entrepreneurs. In effect, with all the examples of achievements cited, who themselves are their parents coming out of bondage just a decade ago, black Americans have achieved amazing feats despite increasing discriminatory laws and practices. So, remember, segregation and or Jim Crow laws were rampant throughout the Deep South. This resulted in the continuation of black Americans supporting black businesses exclusively. Let's proceed. During this period, black Americans gained affluence, which became attainable in many black enclaves. The main point here is their own enclaves or neighborhoods. The history of Black Wall Street over the decades has been overshadowed by the horrific massacre that took place in the year 1921. However, I want to take the opportunity to only focus on the outstanding Black American collaborations this historic community has done in developing a wealth-building template for future generations. So, if my viewers want to study this part of history related to Black Wall Street, I might even encourage you to do your own research. Today, I want to cover the outstanding advancements as an inspiration to future Black communities. Let's get started. In the early 1900s, Greenwood District in Tulsa, Oklahoma was a bustling neighborhood many Black Americans called home. In fact, the neighborhood Black residents were championed in the field of business affairs, later affording them a substantial amount of land and properties. Furthermore, various Black professionals like teachers, dentists, doctors, lawyers, and bankers put their community in high regards in community building endeavors. Notably, the neighborhood became so desirable and prosperous, it was dubbed the Black Wall Street. So, it is amazing all this wealth building was done during the time of oppressive Jim Crow laws. With that said, I can't help noticing the key to all this fortune was by creating their own Black neighborhoods. This built community wealth by supporting Black dollars, recycling capital and goods in their own communities. Let's move on. However, besides the obvious external evil that took place in 1921 in Tulsa, there was additional internal factors brewing that extinguished and derailed the success of many thriving Black communities like Greenwood during those times. The definition or meaning of the phrase respectability politics is a political strategy wherein members of a marginalized community will deliberately abandon punitive, controversial aspects of their own cultural political identity. This is done by a method of assimilating into the greater culture. In contrast, yesterday's respectability politics meant something slightly different than it symbolizes today. Today, Black Americans in American universities, corporate settings, or just running simple day-to-day errands realize that there is a code of conduct. For an example, something as mundane as code switching, which infers to adjust your Black vernacular and choice of speech. The goal is to demonstrate assimilation through speech in professional settings or to manage professional business. Another recent example of this phenomena is the social media viral videos, which talks about the appropriate places to wear a hair bonnet for Black women. Shout out to Monique. Currently, understanding how respectability politics works in different spaces creates less scrutiny and discrimination, while we are away from the comforts of our home and family circles. So, just choosing what to wear before making a run to the corner market must be well thought out before leaving your home. Otherwise, you will be followed down the aisles by the store personnel. In contrast, others in similar situations, at the same store, mind you, have the luxury of shopping in peace. The double standards in America are criminal. Let's continue. The big picture here is being aware of these unspoken nuances. Knowing these rules in America's double standards could be the major factor in gaining fair and just opportunities in America, as well as possibly acquiring future wealth and prosperity. Unlike Black Americans' sentiment today, you handle your business like work and school and go home. No time for chit-chat. However, I noticed during my research there were some Black Americans, our ancestors, from past generations who truly believed that if they successfully and completely assimilated into the American culture by identifying as American first and everything else last, that their humanity would be respected. Boy, were they wrong. Moving on. The goal of some Black Americans, as well as newly arriving immigrants from other countries, was to mirror a so-called American ideology, lifestyle, and identity. This was one of the reasons later some Black Americans pushed for integration, while others in the community appreciated separation. The only problem with this reasoning for those who wanted integration was the risk of losing their base identity and culture. For future generations who became highly educated and well off, they mistakenly placed all their eggs in a single basket called cultural assimilation. Welcome to the Thought Cafe. Today I'm having a medium brewed coffee with my favorite creamer. In the meantime, I wanted to add my opinion on the conditioning of cultural assimilation relative to the previous Black community. Regrettably, social practices like this resulted in us losing our cultural moral compass and values as a people. In addition, despite years of quote-unquote pulling one up from their bootstraps, we never fully received a genuine invitation to becoming Americans from the greater culture. This is what I meant in the previous section by the quote-unquote internal factors. We paid a hefty price for needing the approval from an oppressive system that cost us the loss of a thriving future generation. As a result of later, quote-unquote, so-called integrating into American society, we lost our children because they were educated by others. Black wealth was now being spent in other communities. Sadly, this caused the loss in capital to maintain our own neighborhoods, unfortunately causing a whole generation to miss the opportunity to rebuild independent communities like Black Wall Street. We basically lost our focus on what was important. However, I am optimistic about our future generations moving forward. The new paradigm of wealth for Black Americans calls for revisiting the creation of new and improved Black Wall Street. With this thought in mind, Black Wall Street can be established anywhere in the world. First, we must reinforce our past commitments in being inspired by our ancestors' playbook, starting with nourishing healthy, strong family social structures within our communities. Second, we can continue, like earlier generations, encouraging the importance of educating our own youth in all subjects and disciplines needed, including professions and skilled trade work to rebuild successful independent neighborhoods. Finally, it is imperative to take a deep dive in lessons regarding economics, business, and community wealth development. This should be taught as early as grade school. Yes, grade school. Shout out to Dr. Claude Anderson. In conclusion, we must realize the mistakes that were made and how they were made. This is the shift we need to refocus and realign our mental, physical, and spiritual center. The world we live in naturally continues to turn and its inhabitants evolve. If we study and observe nature, learn from our ancestors, and the most important factor, continue our faith in a higher power, we will create another world of peace and serenity as we once knew. Thank you for viewing a short history lesson on the history of early Black American wealth, the second installment. This is the fourth video covering the early history of American wealth, starting with the Rockefellers, 1, 2, the Dollar Princesses, 3, the New Orleans wealthy Creoles, and today's current story in that order. I hope you will enjoy all 4 videos in this short series, covering the early American prosperity, how it was acquired, maintained, and lost. I want to leave you important information about an honorable author I mentioned in the video named Dr. Claude Anderson. This man has a plethora of must-read books regarding Black economics in America. One of his books out of many I will suggest you read, which is one of my favorites, is Powernomics. So, what were your thoughts on today's lesson? Please leave a comment, like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so when I upload another video, you will be notified. As always, because everyone has a story. Ciao!